All right, guys, welcome to Beyond the Court, episode 3. We're so happy that you're here joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed episodes 1 and 2 so far. Thanks so much for checking us out on our channel and on our Instagram as well. As you can tell, we have a full squad in the building. So a special welcome to Amir, Daryl, John, Nabil, Anwar, Andy, and I'm Pan, also known as Agent P. So welcome. As we get started today, guys, we got a tons of topics that we want to go over today. In particular, just still focusing on The Last Dance and episodes 5 and 6 of the MJ documentary. And how about we just jump right into it? I mean, um, how do you guys feel right away with respect to the starting of the documentary, a tribute to Kobe, rest in peace, Kobe, and just right away speaking to the All-Star game that took place at Madison Square Garden, and where you saw the interaction between Kobe and Michael Jordan. And it was some telling responses as well, where it also cut away to a more present day Kobe speaking on the influence that Michael had on him. So, Daryl, what were your thoughts right away just seeing that?
Just like first thing first, right? Just seeing Kobe gave me goosebumps, right? And just brought back a wave of emotions. Hearing him talk so highly of MJ with so much love and respect, it just showed, how close they really were, which, initially it caught us all by surprise during MJ's memorial speech when it all came to light. But, just watching those highlights where MJ gave Kobe the iconic fadeaway, right, for an and one, it was just so beautiful to see, right? And as an MJ fan, but also as a Kobe fan, because, you remember how hard he worked to mimic MJ throughout his career, right? I think we can all agree that he came the closest to do so. And, Kobe pays the ultimate respect when he says, you don't have me without him kind of thing, right? To paraphrase. And this is, it's a testament to Kobe's maturity, because we all know young Kobe would never say that, right? Just pure love and admiration.
You shoot his way out of it.
That's right.
Yeah, man, I think for me, obviously we knew how close Kobe was to Jordan, but, because he said it himself, right? He said he used to call him all the time for basketball, for life, and just to talk in general as an older brother. But I think sadly, I think the world got proof of that at the memorial when Jordan started tearing up and crying. It truly was like a big brother, little brother relationship, right? Kind of going back to the 98 All-Star game, you have a young, 19-year-old Kobe, right? I think the youngest ever to be in an All-Star game, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. It was, yeah.
Yeah, so, you have this young kind of kid on the heels of the GOAT, right? And it was kind of cool to see Jordan in the locker room talking to the team, right? Yo, there's this new Laker kid, right? He's gonna demand the ball, right? So leave him to me. I got him, right? It was really cool to see that relationship. And then obviously we know what happened in the game. But yeah, man, just like Daryl said, it was definitely emotional, and I love the fact that they opened up with that, right? And to see Kobe, I'm sure that was filmed recently. That's the Kobe that we remember now. So to see that little clip, I think was super emotional.
For me, it's the thought of him just putting that in the Last Stand documentary that speaks how much Michael Jordan actually cared about Kobe, right? He mentioned in his memorial speech that that's his little brother, right? So it's a huge thing to kind of see that regardless of what happened to Kobe, the documentary kind of didn't have anything to do with that particular event, right? But they just put it in there because he wanted it in there. Just coming back to Anwar's point about, the All-Star game, and Jordan talking about that he's going to take on Kobe. I think MJ saw right then and there that young Kobe was kind of a young version of him with that competitive, mindset, that kill all mindset. And he kind of said it that this guy's going to play one-on-one with everybody on the team. So that's his nature. He's going to go, he wants to win. And that's where I think MJ kind of saw that this guy could be something amazing, be not the next me, but be something like that every player should be with that drive, right? So I think that's why MJ wanted to help him to kind of guide him in the next phase of his career, right?
I think for me, first and foremost, rest in peace, Kobe Bean Bryant. For me, again, on top of that, probably the second greatest shooting guard after Michael Jordan. The closest thing I think we will ever see to Michael Jordan is Kobe Bryant. But just going back to that All-Star game, and alluding to what Andy said, is the fact that they even showed a clip of that just to kind of pay respect to Kobe is one thing. But then just to even show like Kobe's competitiveness and how much he wanted to learn. Like even I believe it was during the All-Star game or another game where he's asking him, like how do you, play against the D, or how do you do? He's trying to learn even on the court, playing against him, and then I think that again even more so opened up Jordan's eyes to be like, whoa, this is this kid is actually asking me questions during a game. So just to have him, and show Kobe in that light, I think it was just, pretty much Jordan was looking at like a young self of him. And so, like I said, I think like Charles Barkley says, I mean, the closest thing we will ever see to Michael Jordan is Kobe Bean Bryant.
Yeah, and I think along the same lines, it was that sense that Michael understood where Kobe was coming from. But just imagine, if you would, to be in Kobe's shoes, 19 years old, and he said himself, I would watch him, I would idolize him, and now I'm getting a chance to play with him. I can go up to him and I can guard him, and it's actually there's physical contact with someone that you idolized. I can only imagine, that challenge and that competitive level that brought from the court, and how he took that in turn, and they developed a relationship in time to build off one another. It's truly amazing. It's so sad, of course, what happened with Kobe. But you know what? I'm so glad they had that part in the video. I hope we see someone along the lines that we can compare to. But yeah, Kobe's all we have compared to MJ, and the NBA lost a big one right there, of course.
Definitely.
See, well, for me, obviously, you guys know I was no Kobe fan for the longest time. I love to hate him. I love to cheer against him, and I think he was one of those characters that's what it was. You either really loved him or you really hated him, and regardless, he gave you something to watch. Whether it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, and in the end, you have to respect what he did with the 5 championships, close to like 1 game away from 6. For them being so far apart as well, like that, I found that it was impressive. He was, even though I hate to admit it, the closest thing to MJ that there is.
Who is this man?
No, it sucks. It affected everybody. When I remember the day, I didn't believe the news, and it was just, he was such a bigger than life character, and I still like have trouble coming to grips with it. Like it's unbelievable. I still think he's just going to show up to a game, start shooting around, or just show up to one of the to one of the events, being interviewed or doing something. But it was just really cool to see that both of them interacting. And yeah, I wasn't aware of how close they were until the memorial. But yeah, R.I.P. Kobe, R.I.P. Gigi, and everybody else that died that day.
No, I think you guys have. Sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
No, I was just gonna say, man, like it's when you really think about it, it's crazy how things came full circle for Kobe, right? You guys mentioned he idolized MJ. Then the new generation after him, you hear all these stories after he passed that he had all these one-on-one sessions, he mentored. He did the exact same thing, right? So it's kind of cool that he gave back in the same way that Mike did. But it's as you guys were talking there, it came to my mind there.
Good point. Though.
No, definitely great points, guys. Everyone, really hit on some key points when it comes to Kobe. I think Daryl, you just mentioned it as well. There's so many players in this current NBA where Kobe is their MJ, and they openly say it, and they reach
Hmm.
out to him for mentorship.
Hmm.
And even the things that Kobe was doing post basketball with his daughters, and even really latching on to women's basketball and giving it that respect as well, and just for continued growth and development as a whole. It was some big things that he was working on. I think John, you made a great point about just the aura that MJ had, right, with Kobe. Like Kobe said it openly, like I could feel MJ's strength. I can feel his quickness. I can feel his power right there. And he's like a 19-year-old in that All-Star game, and he really enjoyed that battle, and in that moment as well. So I thought it was quite telling. But like you guys said, rest in peace, Kobe. And I think it was a solid start to the documentary overall. When we talk about the aura of MJ and just how we get to that point where it's 1998 and it's Madison Square Garden at the All-Star game, he ends up winning that All-Star game MVP as well. It's almost like the tail end of his Bulls run. Um, it's pretty telling that there was a starting point for that in terms of the overall brand, and even Michael Jordan wearing the Jordan ones, and going back to Madison Square Garden in a Bulls uniform and wearing his Jordan ones in his last game there, and still trying to play. And I think he ended up with bloody feet,
Yeah.
trying to because clearly he had outgrown those bad boys, and and it wasn't something that was comfortable. So, what do you guys feel about just the evolution of just the brand, the marketing behind MJ? We see the evolution of just kind of the growth in terms of the shoe deals that didn't happen, and just how we kind of evolved as a whole. What were your guys' thoughts on just how the brand started to pick up steam?
Well, I couldn't believe how they went ahead and he said that he was a fan of what was it, Adidas first off, and Reebok, and then Nike. They threw what was it, $250,000, where usually they'd give 100 grand to like the top players. So for them to give that amount,
Mm,
that, that blew my mind. But I think they knew, they saw that the Jordan brand was going to be on the upswing, was going to be a long term thing, and I like the fact that his agent promoted him in such a manner that, yeah, what, we're gonna push him like we did John McEnroe, or any tennis and golf kind of guys. Like, let's make him a brand, let's grow him. He's gonna have that market cap that he can hit and bring in that money. And I guess Nike was right in the end. They said what, $3 million they wanted to get from him after 3 years of sales. Instead, they sold 126 million after 1 year. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, they did, his agent did a great job, and I guess they stuck with the same agent till the end, basically. So I was very impressed. That's, you can see the starting of him from going around the world to be recognized as the MJ brand. Everyone wants to be like Mike, and it paid dividends.
Yeah, man, for sure. I think question arises, right? Should we be thanking Jordan for like the sneaker culture, right? That's around us. That's never going to go away now, right? But then you start to ask the question: should we be thanking his mom, or should we be thanking David Flack, right? If you think about it, I think when David Flack originally saw Jordan in North Carolina, just dollar signs in his eyes, right? After he hit that shot in North Carolina, basically, I think that David Flack saw something, right? And, credit to him that he was able to kind of, sell Jordan on the concept and then sell his parents, right? But then taking the actual meeting, you got to give Dolores a lot of credit there, right? To tell him to go on the plane, go to Portland, and kind of meet Nike. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, being from the marketing industry, to see that kind of back end of that story was kind of cool, because we've never seen that, right? We've never seen how it started, right? He was going to go with a completely different brand, and now arguably one of the largest fashion brands, not just shoes, fashion brands in the world. And then I love how the documentary, like, fast forward from that start of the Jordan brand to the '98 All-Star game, where he's wearing the classic red, white, and black, right? Just to kind of see how they weave that in together as one like story. I thought that was really clever on their end.
How trash they were to play in.
Yeah.
I disagree, man. I completely disagree.
I played in those type of shoes, man. They're terrible. You can't play ball in that shit, man.
I think Jordans are strictly a fashion statement to wear off the court, to be honest. I played with one, and I mean, nothing against the shoe itself, man, but straight fashion statement off the court, to be honest.
Yeah, just as the brand outside of just the sneaker part, he actually, he branched into multiple like ventures as well. He obviously had the Gatorade, he had multiple businesses, but just everybody wanted a piece of him as he grew in popularity, and then he became a global icon, and that kind of like skyrocketed him to whatever he wanted to do, he could. And I think they mentioned it in the documentary as well, that be like Mike means like a spotless reputation, almost that clean, that next level person, right? So I think so many different brands. I think he was on the Shreddies box, like the Gatorades, all those commercials. So it's just funny that his brand just kind of roller coastered all across other ventures so easily. So
that like it essentially started everything for him, right? His whole empire. As a former sneakerhead per se, mostly Jordans, the brand was everything for me, right? I thought it represented excellence, and honestly, when I wore them, it made me believe that I played better, right? And prior to all the resellers, it was the days where we just walk into the store, pick up like 2 pairs, right? Wear one, rock one, and now we can't do that, right? Just because there's so much demand for the sneakers, right? And I just want to say it's like a big part of my childhood growing up,
And they're also the hella expensive too, though.
Yeah, maybe that's why I don't like them, because I couldn't afford them back in the day.
You know what? They weren't as expensive back in the day.
Then. I know. I remember.
And they were still at my price range.
Hey, I always worked. Grade 7 on, I was working, right? So that's what I spent my money on.
Yep.
I think you guys made some good points with respect to the brand. I feel like how does Adidas feel right now? I mean, he
or
openly
Converse,
said,
right?
or Converse deliberately said that we got Magic, we got Bird, we got Bernard King, we got all these guys wearing our shoes.
We don't have room for him.
We don't have room for you, and we're not going to put you above those guys. But then, lo and behold, he became the GOAT, right? As time progressed. So it's almost like that foresight and that thinking ahead as well. And I love the strategy to market him as an individual, where even that was openly questioned. Like, why would you market him as an individual? He's not a tennis player. He's not a golfer. But it was a super smart strategy by that agent, very vigilant, David Falk, in terms of what he did. And just even saying like Nike, you want to keep an athlete like MJ, you got to give him his own shoe line.
Yep.
And that segued into different things, and even culture, like you guys said, the sneaker culture, partnering with Spike Lee, getting on those commercials. Mike, is it the shoes? Is it the shoes? No Mars, right? Like just really, really touching on that as well. So very, very clever marketing, and that eventually just started to take off. But what I thought was super telling was MJ with his own words. If I average 2 points and 3 rebounds,
yeah, none of it.
It's meaningless. If I was a bum, you're not selling, right? And we're not getting those figures. So it's great that he really focused on that business acumen to sell that brand, but at the same time, he knew the brand was the play on the court. If he wasn't functioning at a good ability, it wasn't going to, work.
And it's kind of crazy though, like how he started, right? Like he didn't even want to go to the meeting, right? And like Anwar mentioned, like, his mother Dolores and David Falk, his agent, kind of convinced him, and how it kind of started in a certain sour way. But then if you fast forward, to 92 at the Olympics, and it's a Reebok brand that's on the coat, he's actually covering it up to show his his thing with Nike. The Nike's Mike, right, his loyalty, exactly. Right. So you can tell like how it started. I mean, obviously within that there's a lot of big monetary figures that help too, but the fact that he was so loyal to Nike and how that brand has grown, extremely. So I mean, just to show like how to start and now where it is today.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nabil, and perfect segue as well in terms of what we're going into now with the dream team. And speaking about the Olympics, I mean, the call that MJ gets, I believe from Rod Thorne to say like, hey, we'd like you to come play in the Olympics. And MJ's first question is, who's playing, right? And then that segued into like MJ not openly asking, but then Rod Thorne saying that the person that you're asking about is not on the team, and that being Isaiah Thomas. So we touched on it briefly in the last episode, but it was interesting how that got mentioned in terms of Isaiah's non-inclusion on the Olympic team. But what were you guys' thoughts on just the dream team, that star-studded cast of players all together for that stretch? Probably one of the greatest assembled teams ever in terms of roster, and just what it all involved as well in terms of just how it all played out. What were you guys' thoughts on the dream team and the Olympics?
For me, the practices, the video from the practices, basically that is what I want to see at the All-Star game every year. Like that type of intensity, that type of game where they're just going at each other. And you get it for the last 5 minutes usually, but you want that type of game from beginning to end at the All-Star. And it was amazing to see the best players going at each other as hard as they can for that extended period of time, where they're getting pissed, they're getting angry as hell at each other, and I really enjoyed that. And then I felt bad a little bit for Tony Kukoc when they when they played him, and he was so innocent, he had no idea what was going on. And
but he responded though. He responded though. The last game, right?
Yeah.
But Jerry Krause got him wrecked, and he had no idea why.
It's all Jerry's fault.
I don't know why they hate me.
That imaginary dartboard, right?
Yeah.
Unknown. He's just getting picked apart.
For me, man, I think the one thing that stood out was even the dream team wasn't safe from Michael Jordan's competitiveness. That practice, right? The famous practice where, him and Magic are jawing at each other, going back and forth, right? And, I think Magic finally hit a soft spot, and he was like, if you don't turn into Eric Jordan right now, we're going to whoop your ass. And, and can you imagine saying something like that to Jordan? What's that going to do, right? So, and I think Jordan responded, and kind of won the game, basically saying like, I own this decade, right? He replied with something, it's the 90s, basically saying like, I own this decade, right? And then finally it was on the bus going back, and it was all quiet, no one's talking, that Magic finally breaks the ice by saying, we shouldn't have pissed him off, right? I think you see like this, I think at that moment, I think it highlighted it in the documentary, where like that was a moment where Jordan became like, everyone started fearing him, like on that dream team.
He's a top level, yeah,
He took everybody to school, and like I think only one other person scored in that last 8 minutes, whatever they played. Can't remember who it was, but everything else was Jordan, right? So I think it kind of solidified him like, at the top of that dream team as well.
Yeah, just to kind of jump off what Anwar was saying there, I think that team, they kind of had a really close bond, but at the same time, that's when Jordan kind of took the top spot in the league, like officially. I think Magic Johnson was the one who said that after that whole practice, when they went back to their hotel, it was him, Bird, kind of having drinks, and then Michael Jordan was just smoking a cigar, kind of comes over to them, puts his arm around both of them and says, there's a new sheriff in town, guys. And that's when it's kind of like, yeah, you're the new guy. You got the game now. You got the NBA. Go ahead, take it. So I think that's where from that like, dream. Say that again.
Can you imagine saying that to like Magic and Bird though? Like,
yeah. But from their mouths, they said it. They accepted it. So it's it tells that they had the respect. They they knew who he was and knew how amazing he was. So that's what I took away from that '92 Dream Team. So,
well, the Dream Team for me, I mean, I think it's the best assembled team ever in history of any sports. You had 11 Hall of Famers. At the end of their careers, 23 total championships in all the players. But alluding to one thing you said, why Isaiah Thomas or maybe he was left off for certain reasons, but I think they had said that all the players bonded so well And I think Magic Johnson had a little tiff too with Isaiah Thomas that they kind of mentioned a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they kind of didn't want to take away from that, that bond.
And Pippen too.
And that kind of translated onto the court. But the one thing I want to say is I would have loved to have been Christian Laettner. I don't care if I get 0 minutes, but to be like VIP spectator to watch, and I would have loved to have been in his shoes from a guy who got chosen from college, right? Because he was like the number 1 prospect at the time. So to be a college player, to be looking at these guys, man, I would have paid big.
And he's in the
bucks.
Hall of Fame. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame because they inducted the entire dream team.
by the dream team, but not individually, unfortunately. But
I just want to say though, like it shouldn't have been Laettner. It should have been Shaq because it was between Shaq and Laettner.
Really?
Right. I would have put O'Neal on the team.
I didn't know that. Huh.
But I think at that time though, Laettner was the number 1 prospect coming out of college, or in that time.
So they needed someone from college.
Because I think Shaq, if I'm not mistaken, was maybe a year later or 2 years later.
No, he got drafted in '92, right? So Shaq got drafted in '92, I believe.
We might have to go to our stats guy for that, but
yeah, we'll check that. We'll check
that up. But I'm pretty sure that's why they took him, because I think he was the number 1 at the time. Mind you, I'm not taking away from Shaq. I mean, I'm sure if
that's
Shaq,
true. Where's the Shaq and Laettner beef, man? Shaq should be going in right now. All these
right,
years,
like
so pissed off with the Laettner selection, but yeah, no, very valid points.
Honestly, man, I feel like the Isaiah Thomas thing. I mean, sucks for Isaiah Thomas, right? That's like a mark on his resume for like ever. But like, it wasn't just Jordan said. Like everyone blames me. It wasn't me, right? It was like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think Isaiah had something with almost like everyone. So just to Emil's point about that chemistry, I think they didn't want to affect any of that because obviously that has a huge impact on an international level, right? So I think that played a huge factor in his kind of being on the team or not.
Shaq was drafted.
I think they did mention. No, you're exactly right. Like Nabil was saying, it was Pippen had issues with him, Horace had issues with him, another guy had issues with him, but MJ was the only openly known guy publicly to say that I have issues with him. So that made him a focal point, I think, and which is often the case. Whatever's the easiest target that they know can be linked to an issue. That's how it goes. But I'm just thinking about like Kukoc, man. Like, can you imagine his country's like in civil war? He's looking to the NBA. That's like his freedom of state of mind. This is where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do well. And then like having Pippen and MJ just dominate you like that. Like I felt bad as well with like Jerry Krause. Like I wish somehow he made it up to him some way. But otherwise, I couldn't watch that video and just not but feel bad for him.
On his own, like that first game he got rocked, but like that second game he came back, right? And I think he, in many ways, earned the respect of Jordan and Pippen, right? Because think about him on the Bulls, like he was a crucial part too. So like I think that was necessary for Jordan and Pippen to kind of welcome him when he did come to the Bulls.
Welcome him, but let him know where he is on the pecking order.
Thanks.
Right? Like you ain't number 1, you ain't number 2, maybe number 3.
I don't care what Krause thinks.
Yeah, bring it back to Krause. Like it just shows how early that hatred was from Jordan because even a little bit previous in the video, right in the midst of them winning that championship against Portland, Krause was on the mic during the celebration saying that it shows that the team is okay, but the organization is truly an all-time great. I mean, that's what he said while they're popping champagne in the background. The hate runs deep with Jordan and him, I think.
Yeah, any moment that Krause can get on camera openly, where the Bulls were, having a success, or he just had that mic time, he would openly say that the organization is great. The players are good, but it's the organization that's great. The organization is pulling the weight. The organization is navigating this ship. But just even going back to the Olympics, guys, like I completely agree. I think that's probably the greatest assembled roster of players together. You guys hit the nail on the head in terms of just the intensity of the practices. I think the players themselves, all those Hall of Famers, commenting and even looking back on it now, like the competition that they faced during the Olympics was nothing compared to what they felt during those practices. So that alone was the real test of the tournament for them, where they were each getting better and testing each other. You're seeing Malone going at Barkley, right? You're seeing Robinson going at Ewing. Like you're going at each other, just like trying to take each other's heads off essentially. And it's probably like your compatriot and you're the next best guy at that position that you're basically jostling with. I thought that was super amazing. I completely agree about the Kukoc point for Tony Kukoc. Like, uh, he got attacked, man. It was essentially he got bullied by Jordan and Pippen. He got targeted, and he had no idea. He was just like, "Yo, man, I'm just here to play basketball." you know. So like,
I thought
and
we were teammates.
yeah, exactly. I thought we were teammates, and like to John's point, like his country is going through a civil war. He's coming to represent his country in the Olympics. They are a basketball powerhouse in terms of Croatia, but he had no idea what was coming, and I think MJ had a telling line about Kraus as well. Like Kraus was willing to put aside his own kids, which is essentially his own players,
Mhm.
and look to the next thing.
Mhm.
Look for the next thing. So that was essentially the beef as well. Like you're not paying Pippen, you're not paying Jordan, but you've already scouted this guy overseas, who's you're gonna bring onto the team, and you're already planning ahead for the future. So Kukoc was just at the wrong spot at the wrong time, and that team didn't stand a chance in terms of Croatia. But you guys were right. I mean, he definitely earned that respect in that last game. And
I mean, it's not wrong for him to plan for the future of the organization. It's just
The
you got to
timing.
respect what you have as well. Like you
Exactly.
you have Michael Jordan. Like at a certain point, you got to recognize that this is probably the greatest player
Mhm.
ever. Like you're not gonna find another one. But I think he thought that he would find another MJ.
I think maybe it was part of his ego again coming into play, right? And I just checked, actually, Shaq was drafted #1 in 1992. But just going back to Kukoc, like it showed you the toughness of European players. I mean, at that time, the market wasn't there, right? There was some before, like Petrovic and whatnot. But I mean, Kukoc kind of started that. And then after that, you saw like the wave, Nowitzki. And now fast forwarding to now, like you see the Luka Doncic's and stuff. But it showed you the toughness of these European basketball players. Like, in whatever the round robin, Kukoc was getting beat up, right? What do you got? 4 points at the end of the half,
He got
4
locked down.
points. Yep.
and then he came back in the finals and he was like 17-6 at the half. So that just kind of showed you the toughness. And I think that was that point that trend that they were giving in the transition, that they were allowing the flow of European players to come into the league, and open the gates and become more broad, as being worldwide as opposed to just in the North Americas.
Luca says it right now all the time, right? They ask him like, "How do you score?" He's like, "It's easy over here, right? It's just NBA because
Mhm.
it's a more contact kind of game, right? So I mean, I can definitely see players coming from Europe and kind of blending in kind of seamlessly in the NBA then and now.
Except Bargnani, but
Oh,
that's a different episode for a different. That's a different day and a different topic, right? But,
Oh man.
no, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Like Kukoc bouncing back, earning that respect, and to John, to your earlier point, I mean, I think Kraus made it up to Kukoc by not trading him and letting him be a key part of that Bulls team for
Good
those
point.
finals run, right? In terms of those championships as well.
Good point.
So I think Nabil touched on it earlier. I thought it was super clever by MJ to cover the Reebok gear with the American flag, showing that loyalty to Nike as well. And at the tail end of it, Michael Jordan stood alone as that global icon, the face of basketball. And even like as he's walking in Barcelona, he looks up and he sees this gigantic poster of him, and it's just him, right, in a Bulls uniform. So I think that was so telling. And now Michael Jordan is essentially a global superstar and a cultural icon, right? So with that now, people are expecting things from him in terms of, is Michael Jordan going to be either an activist and speak on elements of broader issues like politics, or is Michael Jordan simply going to stick with the athlete route, and stick to the game and playing basketball? So, what were you guys' thoughts on that interesting piece where I guess he was asked to endorse a governor? He decided not to, and his mother asked him to as well, and he said, I don't really know what he stands for, so I'm not going to do it. But he did support him financially, kind of thing. So I think my take on it is, I think there's a lot of expectation on like athletes to essentially also be these political voices and have these voices beyond the game. Now, to MJ's personality, he openly said that that's not within him. He was always about playing basketball, and that was his niche. So he was never about the activist part. That's not to say that guys like, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they touched on Muhammad Ali, like those guys openly made political stances. So what were you guys' thoughts on that in terms of just that line of requesting him to be, a political advocate or, kind of an activist on that regard?
For me, I kind of I found it kind of telling when in that piece that he was so bent on protecting his image. I kind of want to say, not that I'm not saying he should have, supported um, that type of political view or whatever the case might be, but just this whole sense of, I don't want to piss anybody off and ruin my image, essentially. So, there are certain things you can stand up for and just kind of show the world that, this is who I am and this is what I stand for, and I kind of stand for these people. But at the same time, you can take it the other way where, if you're associated with somebody that has a negative perspective on in the world, that it could tarnish your image easily. So I see it from both sides, but at the same time, I kind of felt like he could have done more in that sense, even if it wasn't that particular. I think the gentleman's name was Harvey.
Harvey Gantt, I believe.
Harvey Gantt, thank you.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't support him, there's so many other avenues to kind of look out for that he could have done more. Even up to his later days, right? He wasn't a very outspoken activist in any type of political areas, right?
I think that's just who Jordan is, though, like to a certain extent. Like, I mean, I know at that point when you're like a global icon, like you're top of the mountain, you kind of expected to, unfortunately, hold a certain standard and, be, if you, call it, you should be an activist. But I think he was just being who he is. You know what I mean? He just was, like he said, being himself. Like he did, as Pan mentioned, he did support him financially to a certain extent, but I think he was firm on his fact that he didn't know what he stood for. So why am I going to support him? So he kind of went against the grain in a sense of like, you expect, a global icon to do this, but Jordan was being like, nah, I'm going to do it my way. And that's what he did. And he continued with that route for a while.
I can.
Go ahead. My bad.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, like, I can respect his point of view as well, right? Like he was saying that, he's a basketball player. He's just focused on basketball right now. I don't think you necessarily have to pick a side, right? Just because someone says, "Are you right or left?" So I personally, I respect his decision throughout his career. At the end of his career, like now, he's, even the profits from this last dance, like he's donating all of it. Right, he's extremely charitable after his career.
Mm-hmm.
While he was playing, he was just focused on ball, and I can respect that.
Yeah, I actually really liked his stance because he's an athlete, and to take a political stance doesn't mean that he's taking the correct stance. He's just taking his own opinion, and generally athletes are like experts on a lot of other subjects that they're taking these public stances on and trying to influence other people. So if he didn't want to take the stance, then I'm perfectly fine with that because he said he had no idea what the guy stood for. So basically, there's one guy coming on saying he disappointed the African-American community by not supporting him. Well, if he didn't know what he stood for, and maybe he stood for things that he didn't like, then you're asking somebody just to support the guy because he's black and the candidate's black. And that, to me, that's stupid, but it's whatever.
Yeah, and like you can't really, because some people are comparing it to like nowadays, right? I don't think there's a comparison because like I think nowadays the topics are so much more in depth. They made so much progress on like various topics. So like the fact that LeBron might be vocal about certain things, I think it's a different era, right? Like the just everything that's going on right now, it's just so much more. There's more freedom of speech. There's more people having opinions, right? So these days, everyone wants an opinion. Back then, it's like, you know what? Like, I don't want to say anything. Like, it is what it is. I'll quietly do my thing. And now it's almost like expected. Like LeBron, what do you think, right? And whether he says something intelligent or not doesn't really matter. It's LeBron James saying something.
Exactly.
So back then it was different.
Yeah, and if LeBron James does say something, it affects so many people, and he might not be right about it. Like, so I almost prefer if they just don't say anything about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm in the exact same boat. They have such an influence on people millions of people that are going to follow their every word or take it into consideration. So I'm in the same boat. I feel like athletes, they don't have to take that hat on. They should just focus on, what their niche is. And if they feel like doing that, okay, far from me to, really judge them harshly, but I think focusing on their sports they're great at, and let's kind of, keep them separate as best we can.
Yeah, I think it's a giant ask for, and it's telling as well. Like I respect MJ's decision in terms of just separating that, and just really focusing on the portion where like I'm an athlete, this is my niche, and this is what I'm going to stick to. And if people think that that's selfish, it is what it is. I know, this is my craft, and this is what I want to refine. It's also telling too. I mean, it's 1990 when this governor race is taking place. I mean, there's no guarantee that even with MJ's endorsement that this guy would have won, right? So I think it's a giant ask to say, okay, I'm just latched onto an athlete who's endorsing me, so this is going to guarantee me victory in this political race as well. It may help, definitely, but it's also like a giant ask to, think that obviously an endorsement helps, but I don't think that should be the sole thing. And as we can tell, like, it did affect MJ's standing. I think that one quote where, Republicans buy sneakers too, that really got thrown out there and blown out in a way to say like, okay, is MJ just all about business and his own brand and selling? Does he even care, kind of thing? So as we can tell, that now kind of brings, chinks in the armor, right? It's kind of like, you're starting to see like, are people trying to throw darts at MJ, and he's starting to see it in, as the episode evolves, where he's starting to feel the pressure of fame as a global icon. And as much as all these cameras are in his face, what were your guys' thoughts as like you can start to see the effect that fame is having on the greatest player ever, essentially?
It shows that being Mike isn't all that it's cut out to be, right? So, that whole image of him sitting in that room all confined and just trying to have a moment of peace where the camera crew just walks in on him and says, I was having a good time until these guys showed up, right? So, that's kind of sucks. You have all this money, all this wealth, all this fame, but you're confined to like this small hotel room where that's your peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get that feeling of how much, how tired he is of all the attention. He can't leave the room and not get kind of bombarded with fans and media answering a billion questions. They're watching every single one of his moves. So it gets really tiring. And he says he was trying to shoot a commercial, and then it kind of keeps mentioning, some people want to be Mike for a day or for a week, but try being him for an entire year, and I'm thinking about that, being confined in that room. It's kind of ironic. We're confined to our houses right now in this pandemic, and you're losing your mind after like 2 months, but him confined to a room for a year, it's kind of sucks. Right. So, it's just telling of what fame can bring, just locking you down like that. So,
man, even that commercial, when he kept like repeating his lines over and over again, after I started feeling bad for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that, man. Like, I really felt that.
And then when the camera like kind of went in on his face a bit, you could see his emotions. Like, shit, are we done yet? Like, I just want to leave. So 100%, Andy, man. Like, he's always been in the spotlight, right? Like, ever since he came into the league, arguably even before. Like I said, when he hit that shot in North Carolina, right? He never got a break. He never ever got a break, right? So just to see his kind of trip from the hotel room down to the lobby, as soon as those doors open, put on that smiling face, right? And kind of everywhere you go, every stop, every door that opens, there's a brand new crowd. There's another kid running up at you with a ball, right? And like over time, like there's a reason why he was maybe seen as a dick, right? Like it's like enough, right? And so like I think that also ties into like a lot of the issues that he was having in parallel to this, where the gambling stuff, right? Imagine being always confined to your room, not being able to kind of enjoy the wealth you've accumulated. So when you do go out, right, it's like, yo, I'm going to gamble. I'm going to play $1,000 a hole, right? I'm going to be kind of reckless with my teammates on a plane. So all that factors into like his mindset and what was happening at that period.
I think he felt freedom when he was gambling. That's the whole thing I got from that. It was kind of a freedom to do what he wanted to do, rather than kind of fit in that mold and what people expected him to do. So that was his freedom. That was his like niche. Up to today, you see him smoking a cigar everywhere he goes, right? And you can say that that's not a really good image for him to be smoking a cigar, but no, it's that's what he wants to do. That's his freedom. That's his peace. And now he's a cigar connoisseur. So
And absolutely, and I think it's all relative as well. Like, I remember from the first or second episode where he was talking about, what people were doing. You'd go into a room with the players, and they would be doing one thing, and there'd be ladies on the other side, and he kept away from all that. So they touched on it a little bit earlier, and then on this episode, they talked on it how, I believe he had said how right after they won the third championship, how they had a beer. I remember they were taping them, and he was like, "No, like, don't worry about it. Like, not too long ago, they used to have like a 12-pack or something. Don't be worried about having one beer now." You know what I mean? Like, they started to judge him so harshly. Like, his fame really got to him. He had his own gravity about him, and all of a sudden, everyone's trying to nitpick at everything he's doing, or even that, that loan he had for $57,000 to that guy. Yeah, for us, that's a lot of money, but relatively speaking, to him, that's chump change. Like, that's nothing. He can gamble that. It's no problem, and I don't judge him harshly for it. If I was in his shoes, I'd probably.
it wasn't an actual loan. It was a bet that he lost.
Yeah, it was a bet, right? Like, that's not a bad bet. 57.
Like who cares? Like, if he lost a bet, who cares? That's his money. He can do what he wants with it.
Yeah. I think,
And he's paying the guy back.
Exactly. Like, if gambling was his only problem, that's one of the cleanest superstars we've ever seen.
yeah. What's been very interesting is, with MJ, he's at the top of the mountain. He's won back-to-back championships, and it's like you have this celebrity status attached to you too, and it's crazy how people are trying to knock you off that mountaintop and either dehumanize, like, make you more human, or make it seem like, oh, this guy has all these mistakes attached to him. It's almost like you're ready to knock him off that top perch kind of thing. So, like, even that whole Jordan rules book that they discussed as well, where that investigative reporter, the guy who was covering the Bulls, got all that insight. And it was kind of funny how they're just kind of like passing the buck, is like, oh yeah, Horace is the one who gave all the quotes to the guy, and then Horace Grant is like, nah, it wasn't me. And BJ Armstrong's like, nah, it couldn't just have been Horace. So it's just like, you got a little bit more insight into MJ, the player, who was so driven to win. So he was going at his teammates as well. So he maybe wasn't the greatest to play with in terms of that locker room setting as well, where he's demanding greatness at every moment. But it's like to Amir's point as well, like little things, like almost nitpicking, trying to nitpick at his character. When he's flying high, essentially, right? He's doing so well. And I think we see it with any type of athlete. Like, they're always ready to knock you down at your highest to find something wrong with you. And I think MJ's starting to see that with the media, trying to pick on every little thing that he does to say, okay, where's his focus? Is it winning, or is it gambling? Is it, is he really still focused on winning? And I'm like, this is Michael Jordan here. Like, has he not proven himself? Like, what more does he need
Let
to
the
do?
man live, right? Like, let him live.
For sure, man. Let
So
him
the
do
big-
his thing.
Yeah, the beginning of that episode when they were showing all the media following him and just swarms and swarms of people, all the people shoving the mics in their faces, just a single point at the center of a crowd, reminded me of this line from Pac from way back in the day, where he said, "If I'm insane, it's the fame made a brother change. It wasn't nothing like the game. It's just me against the world." Right? And I think it just speaks to the point where, like, we all want that money, but I don't think most of us would want the fame that comes along with it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so disgusting, honestly, at certain points. Like, do we really need to know every single detail of these people's lives, like where they are, where every single minute? Like, I don't know. I gotta say also, shame on you, Toronto. Shame on you. We Kawhi, following Kawhi around when he was out with his daughter, like scouting schools, a helicopter following the car
Yeah.
from the
But
airport. That was disgusting, man.
That's just fans being fans, right? And then unfortunately, sometimes there's
Comes with
media
the
involved with
territory.
that. It comes with the territory for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I found that gross, man.
But if you think about it, though, like, look at Jordan, though, right? Like, yeah, until then, there was not that many blemishes. So everyone's trying to look for some sort of negative. And the fact that, I'm going to fast forward a little bit against the Knicks, in the Eastern Conference, I believe, finals, they're down 0-2. He goes to Atlantic City. That gets blown out of proportion. But what does that do? That adds fuel to the fire. And tell me what happens next? They win 4 straight. So it tells you with Jordan, like, let him do his antics off the court.
Yeah.
He'll come back on the court and he'll still prove you wrong. Because at the end of the day, he's going to kill you on the court, no matter what he's doing off the court, gambling, yelling at his teammates, whatever he wants to do. But in a sense, that kind of was like lighting a fire in his backside. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, certain teams like the Knicks were the guys who got the tail end of it.
And that's a great point. I think that's what sets Michael apart, because there's a lot of people and stars, or quote unquote superstars, who can't detach themselves from the external and then still be able to produce on the court. But MJ took it as fuel to be like, okay, you guys think I can't win? You guys think that gambling is my sole focus? You guys think that I'm down 0-2 to these, these Knicks who are trying to be on the come up, and that they're going to, take this away from me? See what happens. And essentially he had that ability to almost cancel out all those other distractions and still focus on the task at hand, and that was to win and get his team on the right track and will them to win, right? So Nabil made a great point about the Knicks. How do you guys feel about the presentation of the Knicks? I feel there's been some very interesting opponents that have been shown throughout the documentary series. I mean, we touched on the Pistons, and it was openly said by even Phil Jackson that the Knicks were that team that was similar to the Pistons in terms of playing style. Pat Riley basically saying, like, do not let Michael Jordan go one-on-one on you. He's going to dunk on you. You got to drop him, right? Do not let him take it to the hole. You need to be physical, or else you will get dunked on, right? So there was an intensity to that series. And how do you guys feel about just that Bulls Knicks, the budding rivalry too, right, during that series, and how it was playing out?
Just think, like the Knicks, man, like they were no slouch, right? Like you think they got Ewing, who's a monster. They got Anthony Mason, right? And then they got Charles Oakley on the front lines. So you're thinking, you get over Detroit, now you got the Knicks to deal with, right? Like it's they're like you said, Pan, like they're the new Detroit. And then for example, like you talked about going down 0-2, and then MJ and the boys getting it together and winning 4 straight. I just wanted to say, like, it reminded me of like the SmackDown that Kawhi and the boys gave Giannis last year, right? Like it was perfect, right? Like,
I knew it was coming.
I just wanted to mention John.
All good.
Yeah, I think for that Knicks team, I think it just surprised the Bulls as an overall team, and just it threw them out. They didn't know who they were. Obviously, they played during the regular season, but just that competitive nature of the Knicks holding the Bulls at that standard where, kill all mentality again. I think that just surprised the Bulls. And even Jordan, he wasn't playing at his greatest at that point either. So he kind of let the foot off the gas a little bit during those first two games. And what Nabil mentioned, going to Atlantic City kind of re-geared that. So he comes back with full force again. So I think it just surprised that they were just surprised in that first 2 games.
Well, like what was mentioned too, like Pan said, like it's as if the Knicks were like the new age Pistons. But I think, reference back to those episodes, I think maybe facing the bad boy Pistons early on in his career with Pippen and stuff kind of maybe helped mold him in, dealing with teams like this. You know what I mean? Obviously, he already gained all that muscle and weight, but I think it was like, yeah, you're looking at them like they're the new age Pistons, but, we've dealt with them. Let's deal with these guys now. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the Knicks were no slouch. You know what I mean? Like, I think that series started off in Madison Square Garden, so I think the Knicks had a better record. So I mean, they were no slouch. They had the better record, right? But I think, going through what the Bulls went through in the late 80s, they kind of, figured out how to play against a team like this. Inevitably, what we saw was 4 straight, and they moved on, to the finals, and obviously inevitably winning their 3rd straight.
Yeah, that last point that I'm going to make about the Knicks was just some tough luck that they had. I mean, that one clip of Charles Smith, Game 5, trying to finish that layup, and he has like 3-4 tries right at the rim, and essentially Pippen,
Defense wins games, baby.
yeah,
That
Pippen,
stifling
Grant,
defense.
and Jordan are basically just like
Swarmed.
swiping at the ball, making sure that he doesn't have another chance at it, and then it's tapped away. And it's almost like just snuffed out that last chance for the Knicks there. And that was the end. That was essentially the series because they're
That
not
was,
going
yeah,
back to Chicago and winning.
yeah.
And it just goes to show you like a lot of these opponents, and even the next one that we're going to talk about in terms of their opponent in the 93 finals, the Suns, another, great team that did phenomenal in the Western Conference with the reigning MVP in Charles Barkley, coming to also trying to dethrone the Bulls. So, I mean, you have all these distractions that the Bulls and MJ are facing, where the media is really honed in on MJ about the gambling, and he's also taking a stance of, I'm not going to talk to the media, so don't talk to me, you're being silenced. And then he pulls Ahmad Rashad aside and said, Ahmad, do you have a camera? I'm going to address this gambling thing real quick, and then we're going to start the finals. I'm not going to talk about anything else. Addresses that. We go to the finals. And how do you guys feel about that final series against Barkley and the Suns? I felt another opponent that was driven. Charles said so himself, Charles Barkley, that he's like, that is competition. I want to beat Michael Jordan, and what a thing to put on my resume if I'm able to take down MJ. So how do you guys feel about that matchup?
Two big things that I took away from that. One was the perfect example of MJ's dedication. Where was it, Game 6, where he said, "Okay, guys, we're all deflated. We're gonna go back out west, but I'm not bringing 2 suits. I'm bringing one. We're gonna win this, and it's over." Like, I think that mentality and getting the whole team together on the same page. Perfect example of who he is. The other example was Barkley, when he was saying how he doesn't mind losing to the best and losing to MJ, but after Game 3, I think it was, where he said, "You know what? I realized that I'm not the best basketball player. Like, I saw his abilities, I saw what he could do. We did everything, and I realized at that point in time that MJ is the best in the world. I'm not the best." Like, and he had openly admitted it.
So for me, that was my favorite finals of that run, because Barkley, although MJ is the greatest of, the GOAT, but Barkley was my favorite player once I got to know him a little bit. And yeah, for the game where he said, I thought MJ is better than me, Barkley had,
55 or something like that?
42 points,
42.
13 rebounds, 14 assists, or 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and he shot 61%.
One-man show.
Like, that is an insane stat line. And to have to do all that and then still feel like somebody else is better than you in the same game, that, oh man, I felt bad for him. I really did, because they had a great team. They were like a well-balanced team. It was an amazing series for me.
I believe they were the best in the league at the time.
Yeah,
I mean, you
they
had
were.
the league MVP, and this is kind of a shout out to Charles Barkley, who I think is probably one of the most underrated power forwards in the history of the game.
Yeah,
His size and what he accomplished. So we'll give a shout out here to Chuck. But one thing that he said in the documentary, where he's like, we were in a gunfight, but we lost to the fastest gun. And I took that like in a sense, like, you can't beat Jordan when he's on his game. And for the reigning MVP to say that, they did go to 6 games. One of them was a triple OT game that they won. But for Charles Barkley to come to that, kind of shows like, when you face Jordan and when Jordan's on his game, he's a tough cookie to beat. And unfortunately, that's another player in Charles Barkley who finished his career off without a ring. And we can add a lot of those players to that list that was, on that kill list of Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and I think again, we see Jordan's competitive fire, right? Everyone's like, here's a league MVP, and Jordan feels like he should have been MVP, right? He wouldn't even let Chuck have that, right?
Yeah.
So it just shows whenever you doubt him, whenever you challenge him, whenever you say you can't do it, right? He'll just be like, he's out to prove people wrong over and over, from college days to the first run to the Olympics to management. Everything is like, don't challenge me because I'm going to prove you wrong, right? And we saw that. That's like the one thing, if I take 3 steps back so far in the documentary, is like his competitive fire is like the one overarching theme, which I think will continue throughout the documentary. It's like
Forever burning.
I saw
That's
a
like,
recent interview. Oh, go ahead.
That's like Giannis regular season MVP, and then Kawhi getting that championship, right? Similar in that sense.
I love the
I would
comparison.
disagree with you.
Girls
But,
really
but
throwing
like no,
those
so
digs in on John. So.
I'm throwing jabs, man. I'm just
Yeah,
jabbing.
we're ready for that
Um,
Giannis go
Come
talk.
on.
I'm ready,
Future
man.
future
Giannis is
episode.
here. He's ready to join in anytime.
Future episode,
No, but
definitely.
Oh man, there's
but
a
just
bobblehead in the building.
just to talk on Barkley, man. Like a lot of the youngins, they don't know, right? And like he was just a monster, right? Like that MVP season, he was averaging like 26, 12, 5, and like almost 2 steals a game, right? Like that's monster stat line all season. Like Nabil said, first, number 1 record in the league. And you got to think like how good he must have been to actually win that regular season MVP over
MJ.
Michael Jordan,
Mhm.
who's still in the league, right? Still performing at a high level.
Peak
So
MJ, peak.
right, so just like all I'm gonna say is like he didn't average a triple single, right? So shout out to Draymond Green. But yeah, just put some respect on my man Barkley's name, man. That's glad to see he's getting some shine.
Very true.
Yeah, I watched a recent interview with Charles, just discussing that whole series, and the thing that I saw that he kind of mentioned was, one is that the MVP of the regular season doesn't mean that that's the best player in the league, right? So it's the best regular season player on the best team. So he kind of said that, and then going on about the finals, he also said that he didn't prepare his guys enough to face that playoff Bulls team.
Right.
You know who the Bulls were, but you don't know that they ramped it up another level going into the playoffs. And I think because they took that first game, it kind of hurt that Suns team right off the bat. And I think Charles, up to this day, still regrets not giving it that or preparing his guys enough to go into that game. I think he still felt that they had a shot to beat that Bulls team.
Yeah.
And just that first game kind of took it away from them. So
Yeah.
it's just interesting that he said that.
I think you guys make great points. I really like how Barkley was presented in this documentary as a formidable opponent. And to Amir's earlier point, all shout out to MJ in terms of him being the GOAT, but I was the same way. I was pulling for Barkley to dethrone MJ and win that championship. I was a big Barkley guy growing up as well. And to Andy's point as well, like I love how candid Barkley is. He has a sense of humility, and we love that about him as well, with him even now on TNT when he's on the broadcast, with the rest of the guys on the panel, and just his ability to be blunt and be honest and give his real take on things. And I think it's so telling, for an MVP of the league to openly say, like, I realize I'm not the best player. I can openly say that and be at peace with that, knowing that I lost to the faster gun, I lost to the better draw, I lost to the guy, and even in terms of stats, guys, in the finals, final stats. So Barkley averaged 27.3 points, 13 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 1 steals in that final series. Unfortunately, he ran into a guy named Michael Jordan who averaged 41 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 6.3 assists. So it just goes to show you that as good and great as Barkley was, he was, he had to deal with this juggernaut in MJ in the finals. I also feel, you guys touched on it, bulletin board material for Michael every single time. Anwar mentioned as well his competitive streak, where you gave Michael these nuggets to deal with. For example, you gave Barkley the MVP. I thought I should have been regular season MVP. All right, fine. I'm going to go get this finals ring. Jerry Krause, you really love Dan Marley. Apparently, he's a great defender. Dan Marley, I'm going to cook you every single play. Right? I think it's so telling that how, and poor Clyde Drexler, I mean, he caught it as well in the earlier finals, in terms of just getting destroyed, because it's just like, just the notion that Drexler was even close to Michael pissed him off, where it's going to irritate him and be like, I'm going to cook this guy. He's done. Watch game 1, 35 points by the half. Let's just see what, put that to bed now. So I think it's just so telling. I think one last point, guys, that's so interesting is the margin that the Suns lost by. The 4 games that they lost by 8 points, 3 points, 6 points, and a single point. So the 4 games that they lost is a total of 18 points in that series to the Bulls. So it also shows you the clutch gene.
They were
in
there,
terms of
man.
making big plays. They were right there, but then Paxson hits a 3, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's just the execution of the Bulls, which I don't think should be lost when it comes to this. And of course, Barkley's great soundbite to say, like, take that ish off the windows. It's not over yet. So
You don't
he
need
has
it
a pathetic
tonight.
time. Not tonight, right?
That was my favorite quote of the entire series so far, man. That's what makes you love Barkley, because it's like, you know what, he's down.
Typical.
They may be out. They're facing their backs against the wall, but you're not gonna play him like a punk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even that Dream Team quote, right? When he's like, it's going to be a rough night for Angola. I don't know where Angola is, right? But it's going to be a rough night for Angola. So, man, Barkley has some gems, man. But
we love Angola, though, right? Like,
yeah, shout out to Angola, but they didn't stand a chance. But some great episodes that we went through, guys. So, just some awesome takes. Can you believe that we're 4 episodes away from it being put to bed, right? We've covered 6 episodes in total. 4 more to go. 7 and 8 are coming up as well. So that concludes Beyond the Court, episode 3, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to put a question out to the audience and those watching at home. What stood out for you in episodes 5 and 6 of The Last Dance? Comment below, or even don't hesitate to head over to our Instagram page at BeyondTheCourt_podcast and tell us what you think. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow. And thanks so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and be blessed. We out.